Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, and unlike Rumpelstiltskin, there's absolutely no prize for remembering my name. Well, today we're going to be looking at three very different musicals which were on, and indeed in some cases are still on, in London. On the face of it, the shows don't have very much in common. They are Assassins by Stephen Sondheim, Made in Dagenham, a musicalised version of the recent film, and Urinetown. But on closer inspection, there is rather more that links them than perhaps would at first sight meet the eye. Interestingly, one of those links is the American Dream. Because Assassins is all about the American Dream, perhaps what happens when it goes a little sour, or what happens if you're outside society enough to not feel the benefits of it. In Made in Dagenham, it's much less overt. But then again, Made in Dagenham is set in a car factory. It might be one in East London, but it is a car factory for an American company, Ford's. And indeed, Henry Ford turns up and extols the virtues of the American enterprise spirit and the American dream. And thirdly, of course, Urinetown is a satire on commercialism, which of course is something that goes hand in hand with the American dream, because the American economy is based perhaps more than almost any other on enterprise. But there's also something else which links these three shows very firmly, and that is trying to change society. Assassins is the story of how people try to change society as individuals outside of the system, which is ultimately futile. It simply doesn't change things, and Assassins is brave in the sense that whilst it gives a platform to many of the unusual people who have tried to assassinate American presidents, it also shows that their efforts to do so are ineffective and in fact are more likely to bring people together and strengthen the very societies that they're trying to change. And we can't forget that unfortunately already this year, 2015, has seen attempts to do something along those lines in Paris. In fact, those dreadful circumstances have given Assassins in London an unexpected resonance. But it is that resonance which I think sends the message ever more strongly that to change the system, you have to be within the system. And Made in Dagenham is more like that. Made in Dagenham, as you may know, is about a strike in the late 1960s at the Ford car factory in East London, Dagenham to be precise, hence the title, where the female workers walked out because they wanted equal pay rights with the male workers. And you may argue that industrial action is outside of the system, but it's not, of course. Strikes are permitted in this country, and they can sometimes have great effect, as happened here. Not only was the strike successful, it changed national law, bringing in the Equal Pay Act 1970, which was one of the foundation stones in British law of equal rights. So this show is all about changing things positively. And finally we get on to Urinetown. Well, Urinetown is best described, I think, as a satire, certainly on the current American system more than anyone else, although any Western country based on capitalism will be also very much within its purview. And like all satire, it's reflecting a light, perhaps slightly distorted, but reflecting it nonetheless, to show society as it looks, and perhaps what's wrong with it. And of course the purpose of satire is to spot where things are going wrong and try and get them fixed. So, all three shows have those things in common. They also have one further thing in common, and that's who reviewed them. And today we welcome back to the microphone, here on Musical Talk, Eitan Freilich and Louis Herzaft, as they talk about these three fantastic shows, Assassins, Made in Dagenham, and Urinetown. And, just for the record, halfway through this discussion, you'll hear reference to the song that goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that song is called Hail to the Chief, the American presidential anthem. Here's Louis and Eitan. Musical Talk.
Hello again, it's Eitan and Louis, and we're back for another review, but not just of one musical. We've actually surprising you, and we've been to 3 musicals in the last week.
So at the beginning of last week, we went to see Assassins, which was at the Menier Chocolate Factory. It starred Catherine Tate and you're going to have to forgive me for pronouncing the names there. Aaron Speight, I think his name is?
Tveit,
sorry. Aaron Speight. And it was about the assassinations and attempted assassinations of the previous presidents of the United States.
And so what do you think of it overall? What's your overall
Overall,
thoughts?
I thought it was excellently done. Very, very interesting show. So just to take you through the storyline, so it starts set in I'd call it a circus. We call it a circus area.
Yeah, like a
proprietor-
fairground.
Okay. Fairgrounds, and the proprietor comes and basically sells or gives 12 presents? 12?
Yeah, the proprietor, he's handing them out guns. He's supplying them with all the guns.
And then basically throughout the show, we see each of the assassins either succeeding in killing each of the presidents or attempting to kill each of the presidents.
But what's very interesting about it, I found, was that, you know, when I first heard about Assassins, I thought of it as a very serious show. But really, in fact, I kind of felt that all they were doing was making fun of those assassins. They were showing that these are the typical, these are the typical type of people who try to, who really have all failed. They haven't changed the way society runs. They haven't changed the way America runs. But really, we kind of laugh at them. At the time, they're thinking they're doing things to change things. But we kind of learn by the end that really, you know, the assassinations, they're not going to help. The whole idea was that no one's going to remember Lee Harvey Oswald, although he was alleged, I think, to have killed President Kennedy. It wasn't proven. There was a lot of controversy surrounding that. But really, we remember President Kennedy. And they actually even showed this in the musical itself.
Yeah, what seemed to happen also with the proprietor, he seemed to be sort of stirring the people on to kill each of the presidents.
So I thought what was very interesting is there were moments where it became very interactive with the audience, and it really they really grabbed your attention. So for example, there was one moment with guns specifically where the actors paused and it became silent and music stopped, and the actor literally pointed to the audience with a gun and circled the audience, and I don't know, it caught my attention. I don't know about yours.
Yeah, the whole show was, I would say, very intense. There wasn't even an interval, so it was nearly 2 hours, an hour and a half.
I actually thought that was a shame. Do you not think there should have been an interval?
No, I felt that because it was one story after another, as you were saying before, how the guns made it more intense. The fact it was continuous, it just built up tension until the end, which was possibly one of the most intense and exciting, not going to give it away in case anyone sees it, but the most intense and exciting finale moments of a show.
The only reason I thought that maybe it could have done with an interval really is because it would have given time for, I don't know about you, but for people like us, you know, we certainly don't know our history as well as a lot of people there knew their history, and it would have given us a bit of time to catch up on the story, to understand and appreciate fully exactly what was going on in the film.
That's definitely true. Particularly afterwards in the show, I was very interested to look on the internet and read about each of the presidents and exactly see. If you went in knowing the knowledge, there would have been even more exciting.
See, I knew about Lee Harvey Oswald. I knew about him, but funnily enough, I didn't know about a lot of the others, and a lot of them took place in a lot of the audience's generation. It took place when we were younger there. If you actually thought we were probably one of the youngest people there were kids there, and I thought that was a bit inappropriate to have children there for this sort of show. But we were one of the younger people there, so I didn't find it as I didn't know all the history like everyone else understood the history and remembered it. Like for example, with us, 9/11, we kind of can remember exactly where we were on 9/11 and understand we remember what we were doing. But with this type of show, like that would have happened with a lot of the audience. They would have remembered exactly where they were and found it more relatable, perhaps.
Also, what was very interesting about this show is that even though each of the assassins were probably, I'm pretty sure, didn't know each other and weren't often not even living at the same time, they were shown almost together as a group of friends and almost as a team effort doing all this killing.
They were a very similar type of person, weren't they? They were at the end of, you know, they couldn't take it anymore.
But they would never have been alive together, so that was kind of obviously fictional.
They do. They put two of the assassins together, in fact. At the end, we had John Wilkes Booth, and he actually came back and egged...
Not literally.
No, at the end we had John Wilkes Booth. He actually came at the end back to life in a sort of figurative way, and he saw him convince Lee Harvey Oswald to make the assassination. That obviously didn't happen, but really what happened was Lee Harvey Oswald, he found John Wilkes Booth to be his like mentor. He looked up to him as sort of a hero, and they said that they found his book in his room, and he had really learnt from his ways, and he was copying what John Wilkes Booth tried to do.
So what did you think of the music and the lyrics, which was by Stephen Sondheim, obviously?
So the music, it was I found a very typical Sondheim. You knew straight away it was Sondheim, and I find with Sondheim specifically, I don't know if you agree, but his music is there for a reason. Each song is done for a reason. It carries the story along. Each song teaches you something new about the story. It's not just there for any reason.
Yeah.
And I also thought, just whilst talking about this, the sound was extremely, extremely good. It was typical of I can't say that the Meniere is a fringe theatre, because it was a star cast and production, and and it's charging prices like a normal theatre.
Yes.
Or higher prices than fringe theatre, I should say. But the sound there, it really captures. So you get the advantages of having not a full star cast and you have great production and great Sondheim and great musicians, but you also get the advantages of having the intimacy of a fringe theatre. So you're kind of capturing both of the advantages of both different styles of theatre, which was very interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there was a 7 or 8 piece orchestra, which is also very nice. And as you said, the sound was great. During one of the songs, they included the Washington Post March, I think it's called.
It was actually my GCSE composition.
Very good.
No, it's not composition. It's not composition.
One of your set pieces.
Set pieces, yeah.
Also, at the beginning of the show, I can't remember what this is called, but it starts with a very famous American tune. Maybe someone will know who's listening. You can tweet us.
Hashtag the American song we didn't know.
So that tune.
Excellent voice. You should be a singer.
Also, a couple of the songs I particularly enjoyed. How I Saved Roosevelt, when also each of the spectators who were at the event also joined in singing, which I think is very nice. And also another national anthem. After each of the assassins realise that they're not going to get their prize, which they're expecting, they break out into this big kind of march song, which within the piece really works.
You seem to like anthems. I think what's also interesting is there's a song that was actually added by Sam Mendes when he first directed the show. I think the story goes that when he was first directing the show in London, he requested from Sondheim to compose another song because he felt that it needed another song. And the song was called Something Just Broke. And there's a lot of controversy as to whether this song was really wanted or needed, or it really fits in there. But I actually thought it kind of tied everything together. And I thought it was good because it was a good finale. It was a song before the finale, and I thought it did definitely enhanced the piece rather than took away from it, in my opinion.
And then finally, the finale, every one of the assassins, they're singing this line, "Everybody's got the right to their dreams," which is a very interesting sum up. That's how the show starts and ends. And with that, we'll move on to the next thing.
Yes, so today we had actually a very interesting day. We went to 2 musicals all in one day.
Packed day
in one day. And what we did is we went to the matinee of Made in Dagenham. And then we went to another show. We had dinner in between, obviously. We can't miss out on a good dinner. But we had them followed by You're in Town, which was another musical that we went to this evening.
So go on, you can start with Made in Dagenham.
Well, Made in Dagenham, there's a lot to say about this.
You particularly enjoyed this one?
It was my second time going to Made in Dagenham. They had I think a great cast. They had Gemma Arterton, which was she's very well known for being the Bond girl.
What did we think of her performance here?
Well, actually, I've got to say, the first time I went, and I'll keep referring back to the first time I went, she was excellent. And I don't know if you agree, and I have a feeling that you do, but I think the second time, I think some of her notes were very pitchy.
Yeah, I wasn't there, obviously, on the first time, but today, I thought her acting was really excellent, and you really felt behind her, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but you really wanted to go along with her cause that she was fighting for, but some of the notes of the singing weren't great, but I think she did well enough with acting, and overall, she did a really good job of the part.
Okay, so basically, in essence, the story was about a fictional character called Rita O'Grady, and she's the woman who leads the 1968 the Ford sewing machinist strike at Ford Dagenham plant, where the female workers, they walk out in protest against sexual discrimination because they want equal pay. So it's successful, the strike, and it leads to the Equal Pay Act of 1970. The musical is based on the 2010 film, which is actually very soon after to bring out a musical.
Yeah, I haven't seen the film personally. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen the film. So the question is whether this musical is going to do as well, because it's so soon. It's only 4 years after the film came out.
Yeah, when
really.
I looked behind me, there was a lot of empty seats. We've got
to say, we were in the dress circle. Last time I was in the stalls, and I felt there was a huge difference, massive difference, with regards to sound, with regards to seeing the performance. We did miss out on a few key things where the cast members went into the stalls area. We couldn't see all of those, visibility-wise. But otherwise, overall, I think it was fine. We got to see the overall picture.
I really enjoyed looking at the set design, which was made up of different car pieces, kind of made as how you would have seen with the packaging of toys. We used to snap out the little bits and stick the cars together. So that was kind of the whole set in terms of the backdrops and what was moving around and making up different parts. And I really thought that was very clever, considering most of it was set in a factory or around the whole theme of Ford.
I also think it was very interesting that they didn't go cheap on the sets, did they? They had cars. They had big cars, they had sparklers, a bit of pyrotechnics. They had a lot. They had a very good set. And cars reminded us of Miss Saigon, didn't they?
Oh yes,
We thought Karen McIntosh would come out in one of the cars.
There was a song at the beginning of Act 2 called "This Is America," and Mr. Ford comes out and he starts singing about how Dagenham is now America and how fantastic America is, and the flags come out, and it really summarised America. It was all big and loud and exciting. And
very materialistic.
Very materialistic, and the pyrotechnics come on. It basically summarised America in one song, which I thought was just excellent. Very well done.
I also thoroughly enjoyed that, and I actually felt that it's a very similar storyline, practically the same as Pajama Game.
I also felt that in terms of the story, it was a bit of I know you don't necessarily agree with this, but it was a bit of a slow start to the show. There was a lot of... But I felt boring information at the beginning, and until like the last 20 minutes where you actually realised they were going to go for the strike, I felt it was slow. Like we had this whole business about her marriage falling apart, and I felt like it was relevant, but it got dragged on a bit.
You're going to be very shocked, but I'm not going to agree with you. I disagree with that comment that you just said. I think it was really needed to kind of set the scene at the beginning. We understood this was a normal housewife. I think it was from Dagenham. I think we understood her family situation. So I do not agree with you. I agree with you that I'm not going to agree with you.
That's a very complicated sentence.
That I think it was very needed. It was actually, interestingly enough, 2 hours and 45 minutes, which was quite a long. But I saw it for my second time, and I still would go a third time.
Interesting. You clearly loved it.
I thought it had a message. I thought the message was actually very good. One of the women the Dagenham women come out at the end, and they say that they kind of summarise the show, and they say how the process is still going on women's rights. And I actually thought it was really funny because in a few years we're going to get a show all about paternity rights and maternity rights and how women in the workplace should get. I just think it's very interesting because if we see in contrast to, do you remember when we saw Carousel? So that had hints of sort of domestic violence within that
Yes.
was brought out, that we actually mentioned on that was brought up on the last podcast that we did. I noticed that when the children, they were having the two main characters, the husband and wife, they're having an argument with each other, and the kids walked in, and Gemma Arterton, who played Rita O'Grady, she said to her husband, "Don't you dare shout at me in front of the children." And it was very much like showing that the women had now the rights of women had now developed, and it was very nice. It was very good to see that they were finally getting equal pay. I thought it was good to see.
It was definitely a show of a big message. Just one more thing that I thought was quite amusing. For some reason, they felt the need to have random letters, an A and an E, often just on the stage, occasionally flashing lights. Not sure what that was about. Besides that, loved the set design. But just going from one show of a powerful message onto another, we saw Urinetown this evening, which was at the Apollo Theatre.
Did we mention that Made in Dagenham was at the Adelphi Theatre?
I'm not sure. Now you have mentioned it.
Now I mention it, yes. It was at the Adelphi Theatre, which Bodyguard was previously playing, and actually used some of the same set there. But let's not get confusing. Let's go back to Urinetown at the Apollo Theatre. The roof is now beautiful and it's fixed.
Yes, we were in the dress circle when we solidly stayed the whole time. It was really a sellout. I think the show's closing in a couple of weeks.
In 2 days.
2 days even. So
Yeah.
honestly, the fans were packing in. I heard one lady in front of me who had seen it 6 times.
Wow.
So
The audience was very interesting tonight, I must say. They were definitely loving it, weren't they?
There was a lot of clapping, a lot of
laughter.
A lot of laughter. A very good audience. So on to the story. Actually, just to start off with the title name. Personally, I don't think the title name is helping the show that much. They even joke about the title name in the show. When I told my friends that I was going to Urinetown, they were slightly just thought the name was just odd. Obviously, it's a pun on Urinetown and
I
Urinetown.
thought I was your only friend.
Maybe I was talking about my mum.
That sounds more like it.
So that was the title. And the show is effectively about they start charging money for people to urinate rather than be able to do it for free. And the whole show is kind of similar to Made in Dagenham, is they make an uprising and they start a protest, and effectively they want to pee for free.
That rhymes.
That does rhyme.
Well, excellent lyrics. It was based in America, and they were saying how big companies take over, and they're all in it for the cash, and they're all in it to make money, and it's all very all very corrupt, and they're all out for themselves, and they don't mind damaging a society if it gains them.
It was a very funny show, particularly the songs, and the whole thing was narrated by one of the police officers, and he interacted with the audience and made lots of jokes, and it was kind of, I wouldn't like to say pantomime-ish because that would sound like it was putting it down, but okay, I know you think that put it down, but it really made it fun, and it took the whole theme, like from the title and to it was a very fun show. with
With a good message, I had a good message, with an important message. We actually
Yeah, it was balanced.
haven't said the real message at the end, and we'll say that in a second. But I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you. I've seen it again, surprisingly, the second time that I've seen this as well, and I found actually for this one, funnily enough, the dress circle was much better to sit in than the stools. And last time I sat in the stools, and this time was a dress circle, and I think it was better really because because a lot of the acting took place on the top of the stage, higher up. So kind of you kind of were able to see everything. See the expressions on the actors' faces. But I found the comedy wasn't always funny. It was sometimes a bit cheesy, and it was a bit of a spoof on musicals. Didn't you find?
At points, not so much. Not so much. I enjoyed the kind of spoofy, fun side of it. For example, one of the biggest numbers where the audience were getting very excited in Run Freedom Run. There's kind of this little quiet bit in the middle where they're singing kind of in like a 4-part harmony,
But very
churchy
gospel,
style,
very
gospel.
gospel. I enjoyed that.
Gospel. Very gospel, very fun. And throughout the music, I thought was excellent. Really, really nice songs. It wasn't such a big band, but it was so powerful.
I think there were 3 songs that really stood out to us, wasn't there? There was a very good orchestra, band.
Yeah, it was mostly brass, interestingly enough. Yeah, I'm just looking now. It was piano, drums, trumpet, bass trombone, double bass, and reeds. It was very like brass dominated and very pumping. And
So
loud.
no guitar.
No guitar, which I like. I've gone off guitar a bit. There was 2 guitars in Maiden Dagenhams. They kind of switched off maybe.
But which were your three? You said there were 3 songs that you really liked. Obviously, Run Freedom 1 was excellent. Was there 2 songs?
The songs, yes. One of the other ones was called "Follow Your Heart," which is kind of the love duet. And in the first half, I really liked the opening also.
I thought, what did you think though of the? So it was quality music. It was a nice set. It was a good set. What do you think of the set? We haven't really discussed the set. What did you think of the set?
Well, it transferred from St James's, which is obviously one of the smaller theatres. I think it all worked. I thought it was a great show.
It's funny. You mentioned to me that we said before how the dress circle we sat and we were able to see more. But do you think that was because they wouldn't have done that usually? It's just because it transferred from St James.
Could have been. It was all done on 2 levels. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if they did copy St James. I'm assuming they did. I think from where we were sitting, obviously I can't comment, you saw in the stalls and I didn't, but from where I sat, it all worked. I thought it was a great show, very fun.
Here's the question. It was a very fictional and conceptual kind of story. We can't see that exactly happening. So my question is, it was quality music, we've said, good set overall. Did you find it relatable? Did you?
I think what's clever about this show is in the moment you can laugh, enjoy it.
It's very cheesy.
Very silly, very cheesy. But then you come out and you'll think about the story more and you'll think about the messages it portrays and you'll think how it fits into your own life in society. So even though it is quite there.
Well, we haven't actually said that. Should we say the full message really, if I could interrupt?
Sure.
With no choice. I think the real message, I think, was at the end was actually it didn't have a happy ending, which was it went against the style of all normal happy jolly musicals. But at the end, what happened was, if we could say the kind of story, is there has an uprising against the uprising against the company, which was called You're in Good Company, who were running the another pun, but who are running the toilets basically, and they won, and instead of paying to go to the toilet, they allowed everyone to go to the toilet for free. But eventually, what happened? It wasn't regulated, and they ran out of water, and then everyone ended up dying anyway. So I think the message really is that although everyone complains about the big corporations and big companies taking our profits, but really they're kind of needed. We do need some regulations, and we need regulation. And I think it was very funny because it went completely against some of the messages from Maiden Dagenham, because the Maiden Dagenham and in other shows as well, like Miss Saigon. I think we had Miss Saigon and even Pacific Overtures.
I get to bring that up the whole time.
Oh, Miss Saigon. Let's not go into that.
One of a kind.
For more information on that, listen to our mini podcast on that. But what happened? They all speak about the American dream, and you should follow your dreams and take freedom, and you can do anything you want to do. But really, I think if you don't have that regulation and you don't have government getting involved, I think then unnecessarily, our society is not disposable and things will run. It's not sustainable. I think that was kind of the message, that It's not a sustainable way of living, and we do need some sort of regulation, which was against the normal American dream. And it is possible to do a lot of things, and there is an American dream, and I like that concept. But in America, everything is very disposable at the moment, and you've got to understand that it's not sustainable.
Yeah, and particularly the person who played Bobby Strong, which was one of the lead male characters, Matthew Seedon Young. I thought he was really excellent, really great acting, great singing, and thoroughly enjoyed his performance.
So overall, what would you say? Would you go back to Urinetown?
I would definitely go back to Urinetown.
And what about Made in Dagenham?
Made in Dagenham, I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was good, but I would not go back and return.
And I've been to them twice. I've kind of answered the question. But I think at Assassins, we can both agree we'd certainly go back again.
I wonder if it will transfer to the West End.
Well, I would certainly hope. And I think last thing to really say is, what do you think about the fact that Urinetown, it was made in 2001, they've just brought it here. It's lasted how many months? Not many.
A few months,
A few months. That's closing down. Made in Dagenham. I hope it will last a long time, but we'll discuss that in a second. You have shows like Stephen Ward, which was just last year, and it was only out for a few months. Love Never Dies, out for a few months. All the new musicals seem to be closing, with the exception of Book of Mormon. So what's the hope? What can we say about Made in Dagenham? Do you think it's going to last? It was a bit empty today. Being it was a matinee, we have to take that into account, but...
Yeah, it was a matinee, and today also was a holiday day, so that could also be why people weren't there. I think that possibly in Made in Dagenham, the advertising hasn't been great. I haven't seen particularly many adverts for it. So maybe if they up the advertising campaign, I'm not sure really. And Urinetown, we don't know if it was always meant to run for long or not. So
that's certainly true. I'm not sure, but I certainly hope that these modern day musicals, Made in Dagenham, I think was a very good attempt, and it is modern music. They're using modern music, and I would certainly hope that it would last a bit longer. I have my doubts, but
I think it's more than a good attempt. I think it's a good show.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that. I totally agree with that. But I would certainly hope because they keep reviving. They've just brought out Cats, and Miss Saigon's still going, and Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, and it seems to be there's no real new show that's really in it for the long haul, except for, with the exception, as I said, Book of Mormon.
And on that note, we recommend, if you can still go, if the shows aren't gone yet, to see any of these 3 shows. They were all excellent.
And I would also certainly say that I hope you didn't find this podcast long and dreary like Miss Saigon. So wishing you a happy new year, enjoy 2015, and we hope to speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Musical talk. Well, there we have it. Aiton and Louis, they're talking about Assassins, Urinetown, and Made in Dagenham. One of the things I very much enjoyed about that conversation was that they described very thoroughly what they were seeing, the experience of actually being in a theatre. Different seats, what they were seeing on stage, the atmosphere, what the audience were like. That's quite an interesting thing, and we don't hear that very much here on Musical Talk. It's quite nice to get those first-hand reviews, not just of the show, but also of the audience, the environment, and the atmosphere. Well, just before the interview, and of course during their conversation, you heard reference to the piece of music called Hail to the Chief. It's the official anthem for the American president. And of course in Assassins, that piece of music is used as a shorthand for the arrival of the president, whoever he, or indeed she, might be. You don't often hear it with lyrics, but the current lyrics for that version are: Hail to the chief we have chosen for the nation. Hail to the chief, we salute him one and all. Hail to the chief as we pledge cooperation in proud fulfilment of a great noble call. But whilst that song, perhaps not the lyrics, but the tune, is tremendously well known, are you aware that it's not American? Like several other national emblematic tunes used in America, Hail to the Chief is in fact British. And what you're hearing is not just a British tune, it's actually a British theatre tune. It's a song from a production first created in London in 1812, and in turn is based on an older Scottish folk song called the Boat Song, should you be interested. But what is the history of Hail to the Chief? Well, it was originally part of a poem called The Lady of the Lake, written by Sir Walter Scott in 1810. The poem turned out to be hugely successful, and was very quickly turned into a play. In fact, it was turned into several plays because there were various adaptations. One was made in London at the Surrey Theatre, no longer exists, but it used to be in the Blackfriars Road, should you be interested, where the conductor of the band of the Surrey Theatre, one James Sanderson, set some of the poem to music, including the verses Hail to the Chief. They had different words to the words I read out earlier, but they were the original Sir Walter Scott words. And so the song is actually called The March and Chorus in the Dramatic Romance of the Lady of the Lake. You can see why they called it Hail to the Chief, it's rather snappier. Well, such was the success of that show, remember that's an adaptation of the original poem, but it went to America. and was performed there in 1812 in New York. And the song was immediately a success. Don't forget, you measure success mostly in terms of interpolation in other shows and also sheet music sales. And it first connected with an American president exactly 200 years ago, because on Washington's birthday, which is the 22nd of February, it was played in honour of Washington himself, the first president of the United States of America. He was long dead by that stage, because the year it was played was 1815, 200 years ago this year. And for many years it retained the original Walter Scott lyrics. The new lyrics, the ones which are perhaps better known and the ones I read out a little earlier, are by somebody called Albert Gamps. But they weren't added until the 20th century. He was born in 1901, and so the song Hail to the Chief as we know it is still less than a century old. But at heart, you're listening to a piece of London theatre music from over 200 years ago, every time you hear the American president enter a room when a band's playing. Well, there we are. Well, as I say, Hail to the Chief first connected itself to an American president 200 years ago, which was in February 1815. And if February isn't the month for hail, and possibly snow and gales and lots of other winter weather, then I don't know what is. And on that feeble attempt at humour, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time for me to go. Thanks for listening to this episode of Musical Talk. I do hope you enjoyed listening to Aiton and Louis, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me. If you did, then tune in again to future episodes of Musical Talk, and you can do it all over again, because we'll be doing it all over again. So until then, goodbye. This episode of Musical Talk presented by Thos Ribbits, Aiton Freilich and Louis Hairsaft, and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2015. And why not follow Musical Talk on Facebook and Twitter? And you can also follow me on Twitter as well by going to @MusicalTalkThos.
We see each of the different stories of those people, the assassinators. Oh god.
The Assassinators.
The assassinators.
The Assassins, sorry, The Assassins, the title of the show. The Assassins. Yeah.